Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
On one level, Frank Capra's films did reflect the darker side of the way things are. Corruption in politics and the suicidal depression that can overwhelm a decent person in midlife, wondering whether he's made any difference at all. But the darker side is not what we remember about Capra films. For part of his films, his most beloved and memorable films, he showed us the way things are. And then he lifted us to that next glorious step of seeing things the way they ought to be. Frank Capra died today at the age of 94, leaving behind a legacy that he crafted as a relatively young man, when optimism and enthusiasm and faith in the system came more easily than they did in later years. The formula for what Frank Capra did seems so easy until you realize how few people have come even close to duplicating it. Here's an all-too-brief reminder from Nightline correspondent Jeff Greenfield.
See what you think of this. We take this down-home, small-town, regular Joe kind of guy, a real innocent, a rube, maybe a Jimmy Stewart type.
You look at me as if you didn't know me.
Well, I don't.
You pass me on the street almost every day.
Me?
Or maybe a Gary Cooper.
Whenever I run across a funny name, I like to poke around for a rhyme, don't you?
No.
Now, something happens to him. Maybe he stumbles into a scheme to make him a symbol. Maybe he inherits a fortune from a relative he never knew he had and he moves to the big city. Maybe he even becomes a United States Senator.
I'll do nothing to disgrace the office of United States Senator.
Okay, now there are some bad guys around him. Maybe they want to steal the little bank he owns. Maybe they want to cheat him out of his money. Maybe they want to pull off some kind of political scam. Maybe they even want to turn America into a dictatorship. You know, an Eddie Arnold type bad guy.
What the American people need is an iron hand.
That's right, that's true. You're quite right, Evie.
They try to bribe him. They threaten him. Crush him. But he won't play ball.
If you can't lay your dirty fingers on a decent idea and twist it and squeeze it and stuff it into your own pocket, you slap it down. Like dogs, if you can't eat something, you bury it.
Now, there's this good-looking, tough-talking dame who's part of the scam at first. But she grows to love him and help him when the bad guys make their move.
I know why he won't defend himself. That has a bearing on the case, hasn't it? He's been hurt. He's been hurt by everybody he's met since he came here, principally by me. He's been the victim of every conniving crook in town.
And at the end, when everything seems hopeless, he'll speak the words that speak for all of us.
There's no place out there for graft, or greed, or lies, or compromise with human liberties. And if that's what the grown-ups have done with this world that was given to them, then we better get those boys' camps started fast and see what the kids can do.
And maybe the common men and women will rally around our hero to save him and to remind us of what really counts.
We're with you, Mr. Doe. We just lost our heads and acted like a mob.
What Bert's trying to say is that we need you, Mr. Doe.
You put that all together and you know what you got? You got a Frank Capra film. When Frank Capra died today at age 94, it had been 30 years since he last made a movie. His best work was well over 40 years old, and he left the world of films an embittered man. And yet what he left behind was a body of film characterized by a kind of glorious innocence, a romantic, even romanticized vision of the ordinary stiff, the regular Joe, the good egg. Frank Capra's work was a fanfare for the common man. Capra didn't just glorify the American dream, he lived it. Francesco Capra, the 6-year-old son of Sicilian peasants, came to America 3 years after the turn of the 20th century. Precocious, hardworking, hungry to escape poverty, he used his salesman's background to sweet-talk his way into directing Fulta Fisher's Boarding House at age 24. He got $75 for the work.
Why, Frankie! Hiya, Papa.
He worked on the Our Gang comedies, then wound up at Columbia, where he directed a series of hit films. Platinum Blonde made Jean Harlow a star. 3 years later came his first smash hit and his first Oscar. It happened one night. Claudette Colbert was the runaway heiress. Clark Gable was hired to track her down. The regular Joe teaches the Gilded Lady about real life.
Dunking's an art. Don't let it soak so long. A dip and flop in your mouth. You gotta hang there too long and get soft and fall off.
And in what was then considered a daring, racy scene, the two shared a motel room, separated by a clothesline.
Behold the walls of Jericho.
Capra was also successful in translating Broadway bombshells into Hollywood hits. You Can't Take It With You, Arsenic and Old Lace, State of the Union. But his real claim to fame and his permanent hold on our hearts comes with his celebrations of the essential, idealized American, a man of simple speech and clothing, a celebrant of simple pleasures, with an abiding faith in simple human decency. His critics called it Capricorn.
It comes out of a authentic feeling, a genuine feeling of a person who came up out of the bottom, and consequently his pipeline to the people that he celebrates is real. It's not rhetorical. It's not, op-ed page stuff. He's right there with them.
Real life, of course, is rarely so neat. Honest politicians seeking to save a plot of land for poor kids from the clutches of corruption rarely move their tormentors to surrender by the force of their purity. A man without wealth or power rarely defeats a conspiracy of the rich and powerful. An honest man, facing ruin at the hands of another man driven by bitterness and greed, is rarely redeemed at the last moment by the life savings of the salt of the earth. No, Frank Capra's movies were rarely like real life. That's why they'll be watched 100 years from now. I'm Jeff Greenfield for Nightline.
When we come back, we'll be joined by actor Peter Falk, who was nominated for an Oscar for his role in Frank Capra's last film, Pocketful of Miracles, by director Marshall Herskovitz, the co-director, co-creator of the TV series 30-something, who calls It's a Wonderful Life the best movie ever made, and by film critic Gene Siskel.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Carnival Cruise Lines.
If you're looking for a great vacation, I've got just the place. In the morning, in the evening, ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh, but honey, ain't we got fun? The food is great here, there's never a bill. So pay us late, dear, let's not miss a thrill. Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Recently, Acura introduced what many have called the greatest sports car the world has ever known. Our latest idea is somewhat bigger. The 1991 Acura Legend.
It's a rare species that thrives like no other. Easily distinguished by unique markings, lean and powerful, adapting quickly to changing environments. It migrates to the snows in winter and has been spotted as far south as Baja. It prefers wide open spaces. Primary instinct, to care for its young. The Toyota 4Runner, no matter how distant the journey, it always returns home.
Fall fashion sale at Fred Meyer. It'll get you noticed. It's worth a look.
The historic Soviet Congress meetings are expected to end tomorrow. When they do, Peter Jennings will bring Gorbachev and Yeltsin together live at 11:30 Eastern Time.
Joining us from our Los Angeles bureau is actor Peter Falk, whose role in Frank Capra's last movie earned him an Oscar nomination. Director Marshall Herskovitz, whose production company is named after the mythical town in It's a Wonderful Life. And from our Chicago bureau, film critic Gene Siskel. Let me begin, gentlemen, by asking each of you to bring your own perception and your own craft to the life and the work of Frank Capra. Gene, if you would begin, give us a film critic's appraisal.
Well, I think in terms of film technique, I don't think that Mr. Capra was the most exciting filmmaker, but in terms of storytelling and in terms of getting big emotions out of our very best actors, I think Mr. Capra really had a marvelous reputation, and deservedly so. Take a look at Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. Jimmy Stewart's been always typically just a good guy. Here, he takes them down to the ground, and it's shocking, and I think that's why his resurrection is so powerful. So that strong emotional pull, that sine curve, if you will, of emotion in the Capra film is what's so terrific.
Peter Falk, the actor's perspective. You worked with him, and you know it's very difficult on a day when a great director has died to speak of him in anything but the most glowing terms. But give us as down to earth a portrayal as you can. What was it like working for him?
Well, what I remember, Ted, is, you know, directors can talk, and sometimes they can help you, and sometimes it doesn't make any difference what they say. Capra did something in one particular scene which was very tangible, it was very down to earth, and it was really very, very, very helpful. This was a comedy scene. It was with Edward Everett Horton, and it was supposed to be amusing because I was all worked up and I was having difficulty putting on my coat. That's where the humor came from. We did 2 takes. I suppose it wasn't terribly funny because in between the second and the third take, Frank Capra did something secretly, which I didn't know about. So we started the third take, and I went to put on the coat. What Frank had done was he had turned the sleeves of the coat inside out, and he had tied up the sleeves and put pins on the inside. There was no way for me to get my arm through the sleeve. So, naturally, when I couldn't get my arm through the sleeve, I realized, gee whiz, I don't have to fake this. And I also got a flash. I said I knew Frank had done it. And it gave me such a warm feeling to know that the director was really helpful. He was really in back here. I had an inner laugh. That came out in the scene. I can't think of a better thing for a director to do. And that's what he did, and that's what I remember about him.
Marshall Herskovitz, I quoted you at the beginning of this broadcast as saying that you thought It's a Wonderful Life is the best film ever made. Yes. That seems somewhat excessive, and you're a man who knows something about this craft, so I assume you didn't say that carelessly. Explain what you meant.
Well, I missed Citizen Kane, actually. No, I think that Capra had a courage about looking deeply into the human soul that nobody else had, and I think he reached the pinnacle of that exploration in It's a Wonderful Life. The fact that he was able to tell a story about a man that in one case was a very convincing argument that this man's life by his own assumptions was a failure, that he hadn't done any of the things he wanted to do, that he was miserably unhappy, and then on the other hand make just as convincing a case that in fact that this was a very wonderful life, a great life, a very rich life, that you could make both of these cases about the same man is a terribly difficult thing to do, incredibly hard. From a standpoint as being a writer as well as a director, it's an amazing accomplishment, and it's the willingness to look at the darkness that I think that makes him, you know, stand above so many other people.
And yet, if you wanted to be unkind about that film, you could say, in a sense, sort of corny. On the one hand, looking at what Thoreau, spoke about as being each man's sense of living with this feeling of desperation. We all lead lives of quiet desperation. And then on the other hand, at the last minute, just when you're forced to confront it, yanking it out and saying, well, it isn't all that bad, life is pretty good.
But
which is what he tended to do in each of his movies, isn't it?
That's true. I agree with that. I think that there's a problem in a lot of Capra's movies in that the endings don't fit the rest of the movie. But I don't think that's true in It's a Wonderful Life, because I think finally it's not a happy ending. This man is not going to live happily ever after. He's going to go on having the same problems. He's still going to be a bad businessman. He's still going to have trouble making a go of things. He's still going to have all his regrets. There is something about that film that evokes the incredible ambivalence that we all face in life that we must live with finally at the end.
Peter, did you stay in touch with the man later on in life? Because I gather that he was somewhat embittered in his later years. Peter Falk?
No, I didn't see Frank. I saw him at a tribute dinner, and then there was a lunch that was also in tribute to Frank Capra, but I didn't see him on a daily basis, no.
What about when you were working with him on that? What year was that you worked with him?
That was in 61 when I was working with him. Quite the contrary. He was very relaxed on the set. He was quick to smile. He was easy to laugh. One of his great assets as a director was that he was a wonderful audience. And I do remember watching him watch Edward Everett Horton do a scene. And he just sat there and quelled. I mean, he was like an audience. He was like a guy that paid $2 to get in. And when he said do it again, I think he just wanted to see it again. I think he just enjoyed it.
Listen, if we could get into a movie for $2, we'd all be smiling these days.
Well, in those days. I think, Ted, that whatever you say about Frank, there was a part of him that genuinely liked people. I really believe that he deeply believed that the average guy, if you gave him half a chance, he was essentially a decent person.
Why did he say, Gene, do you know why he stopped making movies?
Well, I think that, for one thing, the pictures, his style of picture fell out of favor. In the 60s, in fact, he was sort of an invisible man from the mid-60s to the mid-70s when It's a Wonderful Life fell out of copyright and became in the public domain. Television stations all across the country began to play that film. It became our national holiday movie, Christmas movie, replacing White Christmas. And it was through a fluke of the copyright expiring that more people were exposed to that film and to its charms. And as we went post-Watergate, post-Vietnam, people became more optimistic. It was a perfect film for that. The film Rocky was called Capra-esque when it came out in 77, 76. And that was a resurgence of the little guy can do it. He'll be taken down to the ground, but he will rise up. And, gee, you know, that's a story that sells every Sunday morning in churches across the country. He sold it, Capra did, Saturday nights.
Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, let's talk about why it is that there aren't more Capra-esque movies today, then. What is it about our time or about movie makers today that causes those kinds of movies to have fallen out of favor? We'll continue our discussion in a moment.
Tartar Control Aquafresh fights tartar. It makes you feel this fresh.
Only Tartar Control Aquafresh fights cavities, plaque, and tartar, all with one great Aquafresh taste. Tartar Control Aquafresh fights tartar.
And makes you feel this fresh.
On September 22nd, you'll get your first look at a new luxury sedan that was designed by a sculptor. Until then, photo opportunities will be limited. Watch ABC, September 22nd.
Right now, save on nearly every brand at Sears Brand Central's Birthday Bash. Pop in for this large capacity GE washer with permanent press cycle, just $319.99. Matching dryer, $269.99. Party's just starting at Sears Brand Central.
Why put up with glasses that just don't fit? LensCrafters has so many ways to fit your snug points. Like snug fit pads that flex to comfortably hug your nose. LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
There is an easier way to fix your car. Get a Civic 4-door from Honda.
The Easy Spirit Color Playoffs. Purple versus metallic. The one and only Easy Spirit Shock Blocker Pump.
There really is a sneaker inside these little pumps.
You can walk in style and still smile.
Spirit. Easy Spirit at Nordstrom.
Good news from the future. People in their 90s with the vitality they had in their 40s. Science is about to change dramatically the way people age. Watch Primetime Thursday.
Tomorrow, the latest news from the Soviet Union.
Then important information on contact lenses. Are they right for you?
Plus, Tom Selleck will be here on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Back once again with Gene Siskel. Any Capra-esque kind of films today?
Very few, Ted. I think Ghost was one of them, and I think that the public responded. I think the audience has always been open to Capra-esque films, but the filmmakers, I think, have changed. I'm going to ask Marshall Herskowitz, who's at a younger age as a filmmaker. Peter Falk said that he believed that Frank Capra felt that people were basically good. I wonder if Marshall Herskowitz thinks that his colleagues, the young Turks out in Hollywood, are of the same mindset, that they actually believe that people are good, and they may be projecting from themselves. These are people who are, frankly, fairly comfortable in life, and I wonder if that might explain some of the movies we get.
I don't know if it's that simple, because I don't know if that's what Capra believed. I think half of what made his films great was the darkness in them. I think, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was a very dark film. The fact that it has a happy ending does not take away from just an incredible indictment of our political system. I think the way to have a Capra-esque film is to be willing to look into that darkness and really ask very deep questions about the soul of our country, of our society. Very few people are willing to do that anymore.
Well, let me ask an outrageous question. What's the difference between a good Walt Disney cartoon and a Frank Capra film, in the sense that whether it's 101 Dalmatians or Sleeping Beauty or, any one of the great old cartoons, the theme is always the same. Evil triumphs for the first three-quarters of the film, and then, of course, virtue triumphs at the end.
But the question is, where does the evil reside? In the Disney film, the evil resides out there in someone else. You have the good people and the bad people. I think what Capra says in his greatest films is that evil and good dwell together in the human heart. Yes, you could say in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington that you have this good guy and he's coming to this evil town, but wait a minute, this evil town is is the capital of our country. It's supposed to stand for a lot of things. There's a wonderful sequence in the beginning of the movie when he goes past all the monuments and we see what this town is supposed to stand for, and then you see what it really is. That's pretty scary stuff.
But Howard, he does believe that there are bad people around, in the sense that power corrupts. It's the bankers, it's the people in power, the politicians. That's fairly traditional filmmaking. Yes. One of the earliest jokes in silent pictures was a little kid throwing a snowball at an aristocrat's hat and knocking it off. That is mainstream American movie making.
Peter,
but that's not Capra's. Well, I would like to say, I was about to say that I think what Andrew Saris, I would agree with that. That what the audience intuitively understood about Capra's pictures is that he was one of those people. He didn't tolerate, he didn't judge, he didn't feel sorry, he didn't pity. He was one of those people. And the tone of those pictures, you could feel it. I think if he was simplistic, it was that he would reduce evil to corruption in politics, or he would greed in big business. But the people themselves, he believed, were essentially decent. I really believe he believed that and felt that, and that's what we responded to in those pictures. And that's the difference between, I think, his pictures and cartoons.
But I also think that his villains were the least interesting of his work. In other words, if you look at Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, that movie could exist without that character. He's not really the antagonist in that movie. He embodies a lot of the evil forces in the town, but if you took him out, you could still have the story. And I think similarly, in State of the Union, what's interesting in that is what happens to Spencer Tracy himself as he is turned and corrupted in a sense by the system, and then realizes, what's happened to him. I think that's the most interesting part of Capra's work.
Another way of saying that is, another way of saying that is that Frank Capra, I think, ultimately believe that we are better than we in our darkest moments think we are, that we can pull ourselves out of a rut. And that, of course, is a most appealing message to send to a mass audience.
Peter, we got about 30 seconds left.
Oh, 30 seconds? I thought he was a terrific guy. There wasn't a pretentious bone in his body. You'd never know that he was a legend. And he was part of my childhood and part of, and It was part of growing up in America, and I'll never forget him or his films.
And the nice thing is that there's a whole new generation that's able to grow up with them also. Thank you all very much. Gene Siskel, Peter Falk, Marshall Herskovitz, nice of you to join us. When we come back, one man's view of Frank Capra from the drawing board of Renan Lurie.
First, we created the LS400 luxury sedan. Now we've taken everything we've learned and condensed it. Introducing the Lexus ES300. All the performance of a sports sedan, all the luxury of a Lexus.
I'm alive, Jeff Hashimoto.
I'm alive, Rhonda Williamson.
I'm alive, Sonia Schofield.
I'm alive, Howard Weber.
Want to get more out of life?
I'm alive, Jessica Weber.
Get airbags. See your Allstate agent for a list of cars with airbags.
We're alive.
It begins at dawn. They've come for you, and they want what you have. It's your bed, your Serta-Perfect sleeper, but it's the most comfortable spot in the house. It's why people are saying, I want my Serta.
Did you know that the most valuable patent ever issued went to a small business owner, Alexander Graham Bell? Since then, AT&T has stayed on the cutting edge of communications. For example, AT&T just invented a new 800 service for small businesses. It uses your existing line and costs only $6 a month. At AT&T, almost half our business comes from small business. When you succeed, we succeed. Call about our 800 offer. Dreams come true when you win at Publishers Clearinghouse.
2 years they've been married. They deserve it. This will finish putting our daughter to college.
You can win $10 million if you enter our new sweepstakes fast.
Well, now you can go to college, kid.
Once again, we close tonight with the work of Renan Lurie, this view of the late Frank Capra. Tomorrow on World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, a report on Germany's healthcare system. It could have lessons for the United States. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
America's watching ABC.
In the next 30 seconds, we're going to show you the Northwest Ford dealers commercials from this year. To make a point, all these great Ford cars and trucks you've been looking at all year are now clearance priced. The dealers have to sell everything because the 92s are on the way. So they're dealing on the entire line. That means this may be the last time you see these commercials. But more important, this is the last time you'll see deals like this on these Ford cars and trucks. So hurry to your Northwest Ford dealer today and buy one before the clearance sale is history.
Coming this fall, investigative reports 5 days a week on Now It Can Be Told.
Our team's going to hit the streets, dig up the facts, do what it takes to get the inside story.
Stories uncovered by Geraldo Rivera and his team of investigative reporters.
To get the information that wasn't available before, to bring new angles to past and current events. It's the cutting edge of investigative reporting.
Now It Can Be Told premieres September 10th on KATU Channel 2.
X marks the spot for hard-hitting, high-flying high school football excitement. Extra coverage you'll find only on Channel 2 Sports Extra. All the biggest games, all the greatest plays,